Welcome back to another episode of the Spidey Dude Experience. I'm Zach Joyner, your friendly neighborhood webmaster and host of the program, and this is a special edition episode. It's a conversation I'm going to have with a good friend of mine, Eddie DeAngelini. Before we get started, though, I have to thank our patrons at patreon.com/SpideyDudeNetwork. Patrons such as Vinkman, Scott, Greg, Jurgen, Venetian, Kale, Georgia, Jessica, Catherine, Cindy. Thank you guys for your support of all of our shows here on the Spidey Dude Radio Network. Shows such as Amazing Spider-Man Classic Season 2 with Javi and Jack Trujillo. We've got Make Mine Mayday, the show all about Spider-Girl and her world. And then you got our, coming soon, you have Books of X. That's going to be a Patreon first show. And while you're over at spidey-dude.com, you can check out our legacy podcasts, Clone Saga Chronicles and Spectacular Radio. Also, you can check out the Sal Buscema era podcast, this podcast all about Sal Buscema's seminal time on the Spectacular Spider-Man series. So, with all that out of the way, without further ado, I'm Zach Joyner. Hello. And as we get through today, this episode is a special one for me because I've known Eddie. I just realized I met Eddie 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, 2011. And so our paths crossed and we've been Facebook friends ever since. But he is a guy that is living the dream. He's an artist. He is a business owner. And not just any business, though. He is an owner of a comic shop. And so, without further ado, Eddie DeAngelini.
Hey, Zach.
And you're muted. Uh-oh.
Oh, you can't hear me? How about now? Uh-oh.
I hear you now. Okay, it was me.
Good. All right. I got scared for a second.
No, that wasn't you. It was me. I forgot to press a button. So, Vinkman right. Says, hello there. Dan says, nice art. So... yeah, welcome, Eddie. So for those that don't know, Eddie, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what all you do.
I'm Eddie DeAngelini. I am a good friend of Zach's for over 10 years. And I know it's been over 10 years because when we first met, I was not yet doing my collector's comic strip. And that's been running for 10 years. So it's been more than 10 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I cannot believe that started 10 years ago. It just seems like it started yesterday, man. I remember when you announced that. So talk a little bit about how that came about. Collectorscomic.com is the website, correct?
Correct. Yes. So I do a weekly web comic and also print comic strip called Collectors. Is loosely based on me and my wife and my obsessive comic book collecting and geekiness and all the nerdy stuff she's got to live with. Living with me, what she's got to put up with. So I started doing that 10 years ago, and it just came out of me wanting to do something creative and having been a creative person most of my life and not being happy with the creative pursuits I was doing back then. I was a web designer. I was working for doing freelance work and also working for, like insurance companies and this kind of companies, stuff that's very just blah and boring and not interesting. And because, just like you, my love has always been with comics. And so I decided I want to do something more creative along the lines of what I enjoy. And I've always loved comics. I grew up reading the Sunday funnies in the newspaper and thought, well, first off, I thought I'm not a good enough artist to be able to, be the penciler on Amazing Spider-Man. But you know what? I bet you I'm good enough to do a fun, funny little comic strip. And I just started doing it, came up with a few. Figured, okay, well, I want to do this as a weekly webcomic. And I just posted it on Facebook and just had enough faith that I was going to be able to do one a week. And it's been 10 years. And since that time, I've gone on to publish, eight print volumes. There's actually 6 annuals of Collectors. Every year I put together all the strips, all the weekly strips that I've done online, along with new material in a book, which is like not quite a trade paperback, but not quite a comic book. It's somewhere in the middle, almost like a double or triple sized annual comic book. And I've done 6 of those. I've done one Spanish language one shot of Collectors. And then the 8th one is the now new Complete Collectors Volume 1 trade paperback.
That is awesome.
That is
I
actually
love that cover.
I don't have it in front of me, but I equally love the variant cover that my good friend Jay Sullivan, who is a cover artist for IDW, did of the variant cover for this, which is like a takeoff, an homage to, I believe it's Batman #9 from the Golden Age with Batman and Robin under the spotlight. But he really drew it realistically as my wife and I, and it's just hysterically funny. It's hilarious.
It's funny. It's Batman 16 because I have that. Is it this the one that you're talking about?
No, it's Batman 9.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have anything else in the background other than just black.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
And it's just the image of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So for anybody who is watching this, you can go to my website at collectorscomic.com tomorrow and you'll see it, because after we're done here, I'm actually going to go and update my website to start putting the book up live for sale. So
nice.
Yeah.
Now,
all the Kickstarter rewards are all fulfilled because I wanted to make sure I take care of all of them first. And now the book is available for anyone and everyone to buy.
Nice. All right. Collectorscomic.com. I'll keep that up for a little bit for those that are watching us. If you're listening to the audio edition of this is coming. The audio edition is going to come out next week. Fingers crossed. I get it done on over the weekend. But so we're probably going to be having some references to some visual aids. So there's your disclaimer for that I usually do at the beginning of every episode. But yeah. Okay. So let's go back. Talk about your how did you get into collecting? How did you get started in comics, and kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Well, little 8, 9, 10-year-old Eddie just gravitated towards Spider-Man and loved the fact that when I was a little kid, and I'm going to be dating myself here, Spider-Man would appear on the Electric Company. And
yes.
I just loved it. I didn't know who the heck this guy was, but I loved him. And when I went to the grocery store, because back then grocery store, liquor stores, convenience stores still had spinner racks. And I would walk by the spinner rack and I would see Spider-Man. And I would beg my parents, buy me, can you buy me, buy me, buy me? And they would start buying me comic books with Spider-Man on it, anything with Spider-Man. If I was homesick from school, my dad would always stop off on his way home from work at whatever little convenience store and pick up anything that he saw Spider-Man on and bring it home for me to read. So that's where it all started.
Wow. That to me
goes to this age. To this day, it's still going.
You at one point had every Spidey comic published at that point, or every Amazing Spider-Man comic published, right?
Yeah, the main title, Amazing Spider-Man, not counting every single variant that had come out, but just every issue. From Amazing Fantasy 15 to Amazing Spider-Man #1 all the way through to, at that time, Amazing Spider-Man 700.
That's
everything. I had some of the variants all along, but I did not go back and get every single variant for every issue. But it was still a set.
Yeah, there's a guy I follow on Facebook and Twitter. His handle's Dr. Spidey. He's an orthodontist, and he gets like every variant, and I'm like especially now, it's crazy that he's on it. I mean, you buy an X-Men comic with the Spidey variant. I know it's the 60th anniversary and all, but so you always have been in California, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I was born in Chicago, but I was raised out here, so it's pretty much all I've known. Yeah. So
Southern California guy getting all these comics. Was it like a 7-Eleven? Do y'all even have? Y'all have those, right?
Of course, 7-Eleven is everywhere. Come on.
You
can probably go to somewhere deepest continent in Africa or Asia and find a 7-Eleven, I'm sure.
That's probably true.
More years they'll have a 7-Eleven on the moon and on Mars. So,
when we get that.
Go ahead.
Where'd you? Where'd you get those comics at? Was it just the grocery store, or did you start going to comic shops, or when did that?
Time I didn't. At that time, I didn't even know there were comic shops. I had no clue. I didn't find that until maybe my teens that I realized, oh, there's actually comic book shops. There was a liquor store close to my house, a few blocks. I would always be riding my bike home from school and pass by the liquor store, and they had a spinner rack, and I would always stop there and spend my allowance money on comic books.
Nice.
So
you bought it at a liquor store. Huh.
Liquor store.
See, like, that's crazy, because like down, over here in Texas, you can't, nobody under 21 allowed in the liquor store. But you as a kid getting to go in there and grab a few and they had comics. That's the thing too. Liquor store was like the convenience store. Yeah, they sold liquor behind the counter. Or, okay.
Some of the shelves kind of off to the side where the kids didn't go, but then they had all the snacks and potato chips and cookies and this and that, and probably like a Pac-Man video game there by the door. So all the kids would always go to the liquor store after school and buy comics and play video games until their parents got home.
Okay, that makes
we were all latchkey kids. Get off at school from 3, play video games until 5, and then run home before mom or dad gets home and pretend like you were there the whole time doing your homework.
Right. But then there was always that one time when your parents showed up or got home early and they're like, "Where are you?"
Then you got that was a school function.
Where were you at? So let's talk about, when did you go to your first convention? As just a fan.
First convention was San Diego Comic-Con, and I believe it was 86 or 87. And back then, you did not have to fight online months before to get a badge to go in. You could just show up the day of, go to the ticket booth, and buy your badge.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to say how old I was at that point, but if it was 87, I was not even born yet. So I was born at the end.
Honestly, I'm not too it might have been a little bit later, because I remember I was already driving. So 87, 88, I'm not sure. What I do remember is that at one point when we were up on a second level looking down at the crowd trying to get in one morning, these two older men walked up to us, looked over to the side where we were looking, and then just started commenting about the crowd and talking to us. And then they walked off, and I didn't know who they were. And my friend goes, do you know who that was? I'm like, no, that was Harlan Ellison, and I forget who else. But it was, I had no clue. I was like, I think 15, 16, something like that. 16, 17, because I was old enough to drive. So, but I had no clue back then who they were. It was Harlan Ellison and Gene Roddenberry, and I remember. But I didn't know. This was before the internet. A lot of times you didn't know what these people looked like.
Yeah, unless you saw them on a TV show.
Right, except for Harlan Ellison, he would have his picture on the back of his books. But if you didn't have any of his books, you had no clue. Now you know what everyone looks like because of just mass media and the internet. You can look up anything at any moment. But back then, so I didn't know.
When we started SpideyDude.com, I've joked about this, but this device in my hand, my phone, is probably like 30 times more powerful than the first computer that powered SpideyDude.com, or SpideyDude, SpideyDude Spider-Man page back then. But it just how far that we've seen in our lifetimes the technology grow. The fact that we're talking to each other right now live on the internet, a live program, not in a studio, we're in our houses. It's crazy to think about that sometimes. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, I've been podcasting so long, I predate the iPhone in terms of podcasting. And they looked at me and they went, "What?" I was like, I podcasted before the iPhone announcement was even made. Right.
And so we have something in common with this. Sorry to interrupt, but you being a content creator with podcasts, me being a content creator with webcomics, every so many years, the technology completely changes, and you have to keep going with that wave. Otherwise, you're left behind.
Yes.
So
you're still doing, you're not doing digital You do digital coloring, right, on the comic, or is
Yeah,
it?
I still am drawing everything, penciling and inking everything by hand, and
Nice.
then coloring and lettering digitally. But I do have the equipment to work digitally 100%. But I don't use it for two reasons. One, the house that my wife and I live in, my work area is rather small, and I always thought, oh well, one day we're gonna move to a 2-bedroom place, and I'll have more room, like a real office, and I can actually set it up. Because what I have is a Wacom tablet that was given to me by another cartoonist friend who got a like nice new modern setup, but his older workhorse, which is still great, he didn't need it anymore, and he offered it to me. Well, it's big. It's the size of it takes up a whole desktop. So I don't have that. I don't have the room. And then plus, I love the tactile feeling of drawing and inking by hand, and it's really hard for me to give up. And it's worth it for me to keep that skill going, and that hand brain thing going, because when I go to conventions, I constantly get asked to do sketch covers, and it's good to be able to whip them out quick without having to try to remember how to draw with your hand, for real, instead of on a screen.
Yeah, because I mean, the latency now is I mean, they're getting so. I mean, you look at an iPad and you look at the Apple Pencil, and like the latency's almost there. I mean, they're just a little bit. But I know I've talked like with my buddy Gerard, and he's like, it is different. It is like you say, it's a different skill drawing something digitally as opposed to the pen and paper. So 10 years. Are all the characters in the comic based on real people, or is it just you and Kristen?
No, based on. Everybody in there is based on somebody I know, but except for me and Kristen, they are tweaked well enough to where they're not necessarily recognizable who they are. Okay. A couple of them might be fairly recognizable to the people that they are based on, but then also, like my two friends, are actually based on my 3 friends growing up, and I kind of just mashed the 3 into 2 for the sake of ease of not having to, deal with as many characters. So, and plus, just having me and 2 other people, we're like the 3 Stooges, so it just kind of works out better just having the 2 friends. So, some people are kind of mashed together like that to somewhat resemble the real life person, but not quite.
I remember. Reading The Gutters, and it was kind of that comic that was like commenting on the comic world, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of giving it the little funhouse mirror treatment type thing. When you go into the week and you're like, all right, I need to draw I need to start working on the story. What's your process like?
Usually it's a couple days of panic first. And then I usually at some point come up with a strong enough idea that I just sit down and start penciling it. I've tried to do this a million times. I've tried to sit down and write a number of strips all at one time, so I just have all of them ready to go for me to sit down and draw. And it's great for people who can do that. I just can't do it. I've tried over and over and over to do that process, and it just doesn't work for me. So every strip that you see is the one that I've literally come up with the idea for and wrote and drew just days before, because it's cutting it that close every time. And then every time when I think, I've got more time this week, I can come up with 2 and give myself a little more breathing room. Never happens. It's never happened in 10 years, ever. So,
but it also allows you to keep very, very topical too. Like,
True. I'm kind of, up to the moment, literally ripped from the headlines of geekdom.
You're like the Law and Order of webcomics.
Yeah. Totally.
So you and I, speaking of San Diego Comic-Con, that's where you and I met in 2011. I had hair, a lot of hair. I showed my bosses, I still have my driver's license from when I was 18. And I showed them that picture, and they're like, that's not you. And I was like, I swear it's me. They don't believe me that I once had hair. But yes, as I like to say, my ex-wife.
you can look at the eyes and the smile, and you can totally tell it's you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's more. I was a baby face back then, but I mean, I just basically transferred the hair from here to here. That's
Well, it didn't disappear. It just moved.
exactly. It just moved south. But man, that was such a and I remember you were the one that told me San Diego Comic-Con is sensory overload because we ate dinner. I think was it that Wednesday? I think it was that Wednesday.
I think it was the first night.
Yes, and I had gotten in later. Me and John Wilson, the host of ASM Classic, one of the hosts of ASM Classics here on the Spidey Dude Radio Network. We got in later than Josh and Don and Stella, and so we then met you guys downtown. I can't remember the name of the restaurant. So, yeah, man, that was a trip, man. I loved going to San Diego, and I just remember you telling me it's sensory overload, and I just remember, Josh was like, "Oh, you get to meet Eddie." I'm like, "Eddie? Who's Eddie?" Eddie is wife Kristen, and you guys were, oh man, it was like one of my favorite parts of the trip. No lie, you guys were awesome. How did you meet your wife? And how is she so patient with your geekdom?
Believe it or not, we met on Match.com. We are Match.com success story. I was not on Match.com for any other reason but to just message her.
Wow.
I saw her profile. I just decided, okay, well, I'll pull out my credit card and I'm going to join and I'm going to message her, and that was it. And soon after, I just canceled it because it was literally, I just wanted to meet her. And her headline on her profile said, "Dork with a sense of normalcy." So I guess that answers your question about how she puts up with me.
Well, because the Kristen in the comic is, she's kind of the straight man to the wacky antics of Eddie.
Right. And it has to be that way. You can't have two, wacky people. You have to have You have to have the Jerry Lewis and the Dean Martin. You have to have the straight man and the goofball. And she's not like that in real life. There's a small part of it that maybe is true because she's the one in the relationship that is the more sensible one at times.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm that person. It's just like your relationship is, you kind of switch roles a lot sometimes. Yes. But it just came across that way when I did it, and I thought, this is funny. This is a good fit. And it's not supposed to be an autobiographical comic. It is obviously made up. The situations could never be true because someone in the early days in the first year, what someone wrote on the crawl space when they commented, they said, if this guy's really like this, that woman will divorce her in 2 seconds. And that's true. It's, like The Simpsons. If there was a marriage like that, that Marge would have walked out on Homer years ago. But
yeah, of course.
You play up the small little aspects of truth and just blow it up into something totally exaggerated and out of this world and make it funny. So that's what the comic strip is.
And you seem to just continue to keep on chugging along. I mean, you're going to conventions and you're, doing, stuff at Artist Alley and it's crazy. Over 10 years ago, this wasn't even a thing. And I just remember when you announced it, man, I thought it was the coolest thing, man. I was so impressed because I've always wanted to draw, but I've never been any good. My dad is a good artist, but I don't know if it was the discipline for me or something like that, but I love to doodle, but I'm terrible.
My opinion, it is the discipline. When people say, "Oh, you were born with this talent," that's hogwash. It's garbage. You do anything every day for 10 years and you're going to get good at it, no matter who you are. Yeah. So this idea that some people are born with the talent and some aren't is literally, it's garbage, because you can look up and see some of, say, Jim Lee. he's posted some of his first drawings from when he was a kid,
Right.
and they look terrible because he was a kid. He didn't have the skill yet. He didn't understand anatomy. He hadn't learned all that stuff yet, but he kept going year after year, learning anatomy, learning perspective, practicing over and over and over, day in, day out. And that's why he's Jim Lee now and has the ability that he has now, because he spent years and years practicing and developing it and learning and honing that skill. So when someone says, "Oh, you're so lucky to be talented," it's kind of an insult, because it completely disregards the years that I spent working to try to learn how to do this. And same with anybody else who can do the same. So that's my take.
No, I think it's true. I mean, it's Eddie Van Halen didn't pick up a guitar and start riffing. He had to learn the basics and the chords, and I'm working on learning guitar too. So, you know, using that as an example, you know, you're learning. You got to learn how to get your fingers in the right positions and learning the tones. It's like singing. You know, my wife, she talks about, "Oh, I can't sing and you can sing," and I'm like, but I spent 8 years doing that, whether it be in school or at church or, you know, like in the shower, you know, it's exactly what you just said. It's something that you develop over time. Podcasting. You go back and listen to those early episodes of Crawl Space when I first started. I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. Luckily, I had somebody like Brad who had experience in broadcasting that I could kind of, you know, lean on and emulate and learn from. But not everybody has that. That's why most podcasts don't last a year. You know, but it's so. I'm so glad you said that, because that's such a truism, and I think that people need to sometimes hear that more, because like just to assuming that you got to your artboard and you started just, you know, drawing and it worked. I mean, so how long did it take you to develop the style? Was it
10 years?
Kind of.
Honestly,
You said 8?
I've been doing the comic strip for 10 years. I invite everybody, look at those first, look at the first collector's book that I put out compared to the last one that I put out. Compare issue number 1 to issue number 7. A world of difference. Why? Because I had been doing it for so many years, to the point where I got better. I got really confident in how each character is drawn. I got a little more confident in my writing. I got a little just more confident in everything, and developed and really honed the skill of what I'm doing, the style that I'm drawing in. So, in all honesty, I don't think that I've reached a level and ability in my skill, both writing and cartooning, to pursue an actual career in this until like the last couple of years. So that's the thing about how the world is now. Back, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, if you wanted to work in comics, you were practicing on your craft and your skill in your house all by yourself for years, until you reached an ability to where you could actually walk into Marvel, show them your portfolio, and maybe get a job and actually start working penciling comics.
Right.
And it took that long to get to that point. We live in an era now, thanks to self-publishing and the internet, that someone can start right away, like I did. I literally do my first comic strip and I put it up. Was it of the quality that it is now? No. You see it grow over that time. So back when someone spent 10 years alone in their studio at home getting good, I was doing it online in front of the world. And only in the last couple of years do I think I'm at a level now where I feel confident enough in my ability to actually go out and do all the things with this as a career that I've been wanting to do. Because in the first couple of years, I wasn't at that level. If I actually, as an example, just throwing it out, if I would have in the first couple of years gone and tried to get, like, say, an animation deal, turn my comic strip into a cartoon, I would have gotten laughed at. because they would have said, this is not even anywhere close to the skill level to pursue what you're trying to do here. But the last couple of years, looking at my work, my style, the look of it, I would say, yeah, this is probably now at a level where I could probably go out and try to solicit this as a animated series.
Right.
So,
and who would play Eddie in that animated series?
Okay, I've been asked this before, and I've got the perfect voice actors for it.
Okay.
Kristen would be, if I'm saying her name correctly, America Ferrera.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Was the lead actress in Superstore.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what else she's done.
Ugly Betty, I think, was her breakout role.
Yeah, Ugly Betty was her breakout. But I really see her as Kristen in her role that she had in Superstore. Mm-hmm. The voice actor for Eddie would be Jason Bateman.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Or Rob Lowe, according to Joe Bryan in our chat.
Okay, that too.
That'd be cool. Like, man, that's yeah, that'd be really. Listen, if that happened, whatever streaming service it had, if I did not have it, I would buy it just to watch collectors. I'm just saying.
You better.
Of course, of course. Speaking. Okay, so let's pivot from the collection and the collector's comic to the other half of the dream that you're living. You own a comic store. Now, tell us how this all came about, because this is an interesting story.
Well, it's 8 or 9 years ago. At that time, I was actually working for my now partner, co-owner of the comic shop. I was working for him at his comic shop because he had already owned a comic shop here in my area in Torrance. And I was running his eBay store, his online presence. At that time, there was no real social media yet. So I was running his website and basically running his eBay store and making his eBay store like a whole other sizable income for the shop. And when he found out that Hideo Hos Comics in Santa Monica, which we now co-own, was up for sale, he approached me and said, do you want to partner up in buying this shop? And I said, yes, of course. I had no money, but I said, yes. I figured I'll figure out a way to make this happen. So the way I made it happen was the collection that you spoke about earlier, my complete run of Amazing Spider-Man from Amazing Fantasy 15 all the way to Amazing Spider-Man 700. I auctioned all of it off, the entire collection. And that brought in enough money to pay for my portion of the shop, my percentage, and also to buy a truck, because I figured, well, one, I needed a new car, and a truck would be really good for a shop because I'm going to be, hauling stuff. And little did I know how much stuff I'm going to be hauling all the time. So it came in.
Yeah. Trust me, when you do not have a truck and you need a truck, it's always at the worst time.
Yes.
So you sold this. You sold the collection. You opened the shop, and Hideo Hos is a legendary comic shop, right? Tell me about Hideo Hos' history.
Yeah. Well, Hideo Hos has been in existence here in Southern California since 1977. So it's the oldest shop, the oldest comic shop still operating in Southern California. And so it's got a lot of history, a lot of really big industry people that have shopped there and been a part of the store over the years. Mark Hamill was a long-time pull customer there, which was kind of nice. And he did come in a few times since we had taken over the shop, and really super nice guy. Quick story. He actually came in right around the time that Marvel had gotten the rights back to Star Wars and the new issue #1 came out, and it was on the shelf. And he came in to, because he had a special order a copy of Killing Joke for him, and basically said, don't say anything. And we all know where that led to. But he said, yeah, don't say anything. So he came in to pick it up. And of course, anyone who was shopping in the shop at the time, suddenly, their heads just whip around like, oh my God, it's Mark Hamill. And before you know it, everybody starts running to grab a copy of that Star Wars #1 and formed a line at the counter where he was standing for him to sign it, and then walking over to the register and buying it. And we sold every single one. And I was like, oh my God, Mr. Hamill, I am so sorry. Do you want me to go ahead and just, say after this person, no more, sorry? And he's all, nah, don't worry about it. I got nothing else to do today. It's all part of the job. And he sat there and signed every single one.
Wow.
Nicest guy. Absolutely nicest guy. And I will fight anybody who says anything bad about him.
Like, that is... it's one of those things you hear all the time. Don't ever meet your heroes. But like, that is such a cool, I mean, like, he seems like a cool guy. Like, that's the thing. Like, he's always like came across to me as like, there's no arrogance or anything like that. He just seems like a genuine, real guy. So to hear that story, really, I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
I think that, sorry, I was going to mention, I think that we hear so many horror stories about celebrities and their bad behavior that I think it really gives most actors, especially in our area here in Southern California and who come into the shop, I think it gives most of them a really bad rap, because we've had a number of different celebrities, actors, directors, whatever, coming in the shop and buying stuff. And every single one has been friendly and cordial and nice. I've never had a bad experience ever. So,
yeah.
And
Mark might be
and for anyone who's my Facebook friend, probably seen me posting pictures of me with the celebrities, because I always bug them and go, oh my God, can I get a picture? And they're like, yeah, sure. So you've probably seen, anyone who's my Facebook friend has probably over the years seen who's come into the shop. So I won't name names, but yeah, never a bad experience. But anyway, what is Ryan saying? Yeah,
Joe said Mark might be the only person nicer than George Perez. Which
that's true.
George Perez, I never got the pleasure of meeting him, but every time I saw an interview with him, he just seemed like the nicest guy. And when he passed,
yeah, my wife had a chance to meet him at a small convention, and she absolutely said the same thing. Totally gushed, because she loves the Infinity Gauntlet series, the original one, and his work. And he just said, he would talk to everybody in line, started talking to her. And while he was talking to her, because my wife said that she loves the character Death in the series. And while he's talking to my wife, is just sitting there sketching out Death and just hands it to her. Says, there you go. Thank you. Thank you for yeah. So nicest guy in the world.
Oh man. We've had several losses lately. That may be one of the biggest ones. So, Radiac 55 says, hi guys, it's surreal to have a face to a comic strip that gives me the same comfort of my faves. Best of luck in turning into a series. Eddie has good potential in animated form. So
yeah, maybe one day soon. I'm gonna have to get to work on this, maybe try to figure out how to do it, because I'm so tired of people coming up to me at conventions and saying, oh my God, I read your comic strip, I love your books, it should totally be an animated series, it would be such a great animated series. I'm like, yeah, do you know anybody? Don't just tell me. Give me names. Give me
yeah. I mean, I do know Greg Wiseman, but that's not my contact. So, but he is, a part of the Spidey Radio Network. But so let's okay. I got to ask some business questions, because I'm a nerd when it comes to business.
I've said over and over, I love talking about the business of comics. I can go on and on about my experiences of what it's like actually owning a comic book shop. And I will preface it by one thing. You said it's living the dream. If managing employees and running payroll and paying business taxes and dealing with, distributors and all that, if that's living the dream, then great, do it. But it's like any other retail business. It's work.
Yeah, it is work. And the comic shop that I used to go to back when I was up in the top of Texas, he owned his building. He wasn't renting. He had everything paid off. So basically all his capital was going back into buying collections and stuff like that. I think he has like 8 storage lockers full of comics that he don't even have at the shop. And so but he's been doing it for 35 years. So, he's well established. Talk to me about taking over a very established brand. And was there a lot of pressure to keep things the same, or was there, okay, I can start doing it our way with you and your partner?
We really had to go in there and make changes because we had bought it from the second owner, and unfortunately, towards the end, he was kind of not as interested in it anymore, and he really let the shop go. So it was in really poor shape. So we were literally starting almost from ground zero, trying to recoup this shop because it wasn't doing well. And again, it was because he really kind of just let it go. So we got in there and really just started making changes from day one. And we were trying to do it with basically on a shoestring budget because, it wasn't bringing in money on a good, consistent basis so that we can start, reinvesting in the shop. We were literally putting our own money into it at that point. My partner was putting his own money into it from his other shop. And me, I was going into my collection and selling more key issues to raise the money we needed to do what we had to do. So stuff I sold off Tales of Suspense 39, the first appearance of Ant-Man or of Iron Man, Tales to Astonish 27, first appearance of Ant-Man, first appearance of Iron Fist, Silver Surfer #1, Tomb of Dracula #1. I mean, I sold off quite a bit of other good key issues to keep the money coming in to be able to do what we needed to do. And it was tough. And the store, unfortunately, at that point had a reputation of not being so great. There were people in the comic industry and also in the entertainment industry that would still come in, but really did not have a favorable opinion of it. So we really had to work to really turn that around. And I remember it was how bad off it was. I was not familiar with this shop. It was out of my area. So I didn't really go there. I didn't know I knew of it, but I didn't know it that personally. I didn't shop there. So when I got the keys to the place and actually went in and saw the place, I saw like how just a disarray it was. And I thought, oh my God, what did I do? What did I just do?
Right.
So it took the first couple of years to really work at it and turn the place around. And I think that we're back. We've obviously gotten it back to where we are well thought of in the community. We've brought back there were some regulars that had been longtime regulars that stuck with us, some that came back, and a sizable amount that we managed of new customers to bring on. So we have a much more favorable, we're much more favorable thought of in the community. We have more connections with things like the Santa Monica Library and the local paper that were really kind of talked of more favorably than when we took the place over. So, yeah.
So was it just the chaos and the disorganization and because like Vinkman asked if we could elaborate a little bit on the letting things go.
So I'll give you a few examples, and I don't want to talk badly about anybody, but the second owner that we bought it from, he was just not around anymore. So the employees that were working for him, who were just not well supervised, were kind of running the place. And they were young, teenagers or early 20s, so they should not have been running the business. So the place was very disorganized. It was laid out completely haphazard to the point where you couldn't get around to find anything.
Wow.
The tagline motto that we kind of adopted when we took over the place was, because there was a sign up in the front counter that said, "Can't find what you're looking for? Ask us for help." We wanted to change it to, "Can't find what you're looking for? Neither can we." So, because that disorganized. Wow. It was dirty. When we started, the first thing we did was we went in there, we started mopping the floors and cleaning and everything. And yes, we are talking about Hideo Hos in Santa Monica. And
Yes.
while we were cleaning, we would find like half-eaten sandwiches in the bookcase. That's how bad it was. So yeah,
What?
it was just because, like I said, it was just young kids running the shop. The owner wasn't around. So it was
Yeah.
basically, the inmates were running the asylum.
Uh,
And we kind of had to put the kibosh on that, right away from day one. And it took a while for those older employees, the ones who stayed, to warm up to us and I don't fault them for this, but when we bought the place, the owner that we bought it from didn't even tell the employees. We just walked in one day and said, okay, we're the new owners. We're your new bosses. And they were looking at us like, who the heck are you?
What?
So,
Oh my gosh.
It was bad. So it took a lot of work to really get the place to a level that we thought was acceptable. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that you've got, so now you kind of got it at the right time though, because now comics are pop culture. And
they still were back then, but I got to say that obviously the movies blew things up to the point where we are getting those families coming in who the kids don't know anything about comics, aren't reading comics, but the parents remember reading comics and liking them back in the 90s. And the kids just want to come in because they just saw the new Avengers movie and he wants an Iron Man toy. But the parents are now steering the kids towards, well, I'll buy you the toy, but you have to pick a book because you have to read. And so it's getting the younger to actually start reading and enjoying comics. So yeah. Hey, Joe. Joe's a good friend of mine. So we actually, we haven't been doing it lately, but Joe and another retailer friend of mine have a podcast called Tales from the Comic Shop. And it's all about talking about what life is like for, behind the counter of, owning and running a comic book shop. So for anyone who wants to check that out.
Definitely. Send me the link later and then I'll make sure it's in the description down below or in the show notes as well when the audio edition comes out.
The episodes are older because, life happened and things have been going on and we have just not been able to record. For instance, our other co-host, Roger, who's also a comic shop owner in Utah, has expanded his shop and is actually taking over. His shop is in a mall and he's taking over the whole other store next to him and tearing down the wall to create an even larger store, which would include a coffee shop. And on top of that, he bought another comic shop that was still in existence that he took over. So now he's got two locations, the main one just suddenly growing to 2-3 times the size. So he's doing really well. Yeah.
Tell me about, because I'm a toy collector and a comic collector. So are you guys just comics? Because I haven't had a chance to go to the store yet. Because like next time I'm in California, I'm making a point to come see you guys. So tell me about so with my old comic shop, he was he had his comics side, but he also had his gaming side and all the card games and the collectibles and that stuff. So tell me about how important it is to not just be the comic side and be diverse in terms of what you have in your stock.
Right. It's very important. And we've talked about this on our Tales from the Comic Shop podcast, that comic shops alone at this day and age are not able to survive. It's too small it's too much of a niche market that it's not sustainable in itself. So any comic shop is smart if they become not a comic shop, but a pop culture shop, so that you can include everything under that umbrella. You can have comics, you can have your trade paperbacks, you can have your toys and your Funko Pops, and also your gaming. And that's what we do. Obviously, our shop is not as big as my friend Roger's, but we make it work. We do have comics and toys, and we also do have gaming. So our shop is smaller. So when we have our gaming in the evening, which is Magic and or Pokemon, all of our fixtures are on wheels and they all just get wheeled away towards the walls. And then that gives us a whole space to just now put out folding tables and chairs, and we have our gaming.
That's cool. So is it the same?
Unfortunately, you have to do that this day and age. If you are a comic book shop, you have to do that. You have to go into gaming. You have to build your Magic the Gathering community. You have to find other avenues that are going to be bringing in your income, because any comic shop worth their salt, worth their weight, is going to have their Wednesday warriors that come in, and you're going to have a great day on Wednesday when everyone comes in to buy their new comics. But what about the rest of the week? You've got to have something going on that is incentivizing people to come in the other days of the week. And for a lot of shops, mine included, it's gaming. And I know a lot of people have, and they're usually older collectors, they have a bad taste in their mouth when they go into a shop and there are tables out with people gaming. And, they think, why is this, intruding upon, my hobby, my comic? Unfortunately, those people need to accept that this is what comic book shops need to do to survive. So if you want your shop to continue on being your local shop and, supplying you with comics, you have to accept that they are in a position where they have to branch off into other areas to make sure they make enough of a monthly income to survive. That's just the way it is.
Joe says, boy, Marvel fans shop on Wednesday. Tuesday is new comic book day now.
That's true. We had to get into the habit of that. We do we have all our books out on Tuesdays because we get them ready for Wednesday. But yeah, people come in and they buy their DC stuff now on Tuesday. And it took a while for us to get used to when people would come to the counter with stuff that's new this week. And we'd have to say, oh, no, you can't buy. Oh, it's DC. Okay, you're good. So tell me about, let's get into that for a little bit, because the distribution model changed. You guys, so it was all Diamond. Yeah.
And now it's multifaceted. Tell me, are you having issues? Because I like the comic shop in my hometown where I'm originally from. They're unique because their shop is on the first floor. Their house is on the second. Their apartment is on the second floor.
That's nice. They got like a Bob's Burger thing going.
Yes. And so
I would love that, because the commute from my house to Santa Monica sometimes could be up to 2 hours in LA traffic.
Oh,
I would love to just come downstairs into my shop.
Oh yeah, that's like that. I told him, I was like, that is living a little bit of the dream right there, even though it's a business, but like you just get to live right upstairs, come right downstairs. And then, because they also bought the part next door. So they're doing morning gaming. I haven't been there in a year, but all the Funkos that Sarah has, basically, she has a whole standing box that they're about to ship her. And she's going to pay she's like, we'll just charge you a monthly fee and then you can pay us back that way.
Yeah. And we'll ship that much merchandise.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, are you directly okay. Tell me about the distribution. Back to my question. It was just Diamond. Now Marvel is still doing Diamond and that's it, right?
No. Quick recap. Obviously there was just Diamond. And that's recently, because actually before then there were more than one distributor. And this was back in the 70s and the 80s. There was Diamond and there were other competing distributors. But the difference then was that every distributor, for the most part, all carried the same publishers. So you could pick and choose which one you wanted to go to, rather than saying, well, you have to go to this one if you want to get Marvel, and you can only go to that one if you want to get DC, which is the case now. So for the people saying that, oh, it's good that DC and Marvel broke up the monopoly, that's not true, because now you just have, instead of one monopoly, you have three monopolies, unlike in the past where you could go to either one of the distributors and all get the same stuff from that one distributor that you can get from the others. So that's the big difference. But anyway, what we have now is there was just Diamond. And during the pandemic, and there's a whole sordid story behind this that if you want to know more, and I'm not trying to plug the podcast, but we did do a whole episode about this on Tales from the Comic Shop. But basically, during the pandemic, DC decided to break away from Diamond and start their own distribution. And so you now at that point, you now have to go to Diamond for everything else, and to Lunar now, which is what it's called, for your DC books. So you have to go to 2 different places now to place your orders to get all the same stuff you used to get. And then it was about a year or 2 after that, or ago, that I don't remember exactly when it was, that Marvel then announced they're leaving Diamond. And so they left to go get distributed by Penguin Random House. And so everybody then jumped to create an account with Penguin to get their Marvel books. And now you got Penguin for your Marvel books, Lunar for your DC books, and Diamond for everything else. And everybody thought, well, this is the last nail in the coffin for Diamond, because without the 2 big publishers, how are they going to survive? They managed to work out a deal where they are wholesaling Marvel. So you can still order your Marvel books through Diamond and just deal with Diamond and Lunar and not Penguin. But they're basically like the middleman between Penguin and the shops to get your Marvel. So me personally, we did switch to Penguin, and we're so dissatisfied with the service that we dropped it and went back to Diamond to order our Marvel. Even though Penguin was ordering free shipping on the Marvel books, the service was bad enough that we went back to Diamond. And by bad, I mean they were really tough to deal with when you were shorted books or you received books damaged. They made it really hard for you to get them replaced. And also their packing was very subpar. Books, almost whole boxes of books would come damaged. And I think that because they are a book distributor that normally dealt with, cookbooks, self-help books, romance books, they weren't so concerned about the damage aspect of their shipments. But with comics, you're dealing with a collectible. It needs to be received in as pristine a condition as possible, especially when you get, like, say, a 1 in 100 variant that goes for, $75. But now you received your 1 in 100 variant with a big crunch in one corner. What are you going to do with that now? You can't sell it for market value. So that was the problem with that distributor. So right now for us, and I know of other shops that have done the same, we're ordering our DC books through Lunar, and then we're ordering our Marvel and everything else through Diamond, and kind of going back to that. And I think for all the bad mouthing that everybody gave Diamond before all of this, I think we now realize how good we actually had it with Diamond. They were very responsive with sending books that we got shorted or damaged. They were very good about their packing, even more so now than before, now that there's some competition. We realize now that we really had it quite good. And for some of us, not all shops, but some of us actually had a rep with Diamond.
Right.
Who, if we had problems, we could call them and say, hey, this is wrong, or that's wrong, or I need help with this. And they would take care of it. And with Lunar and Penguin, good luck getting a hold of anybody. So,
and that's the problem. If you don't have a go-to person that's their job, then who do you call? I mean, it becomes that particular situation. So now, are you doing Diamond like for the collectibles as well, everything like that, or do you have say Marvel?
Necessarily. Yeah, there is some stuff through Diamond that we're still ordering, but like for Funkos and all that kind of stuff like that, we actually are ordering that through Entertainment Earth. And we at our shop are not doing that. Our sister shop that my partner owns over here in Torrance, they have the account, and they are ordering everything, and then we kind of divide it up between the 2 stores. And
gotcha.
And then also that doesn't take into account the gaming stuff, the gaming like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. That's a whole other distributor that we deal with. So there's constant distributors. And I don't know if you want to say hi to her or nothing, but I just heard the better half just roll up in the driveway and walk in the house.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Let's say hi to Kristen when she comes in.
If anyone wants, whenever she walks in over here, if anyone wants to say hello to the other half of Hideo Comics and the other half of the much acclaimed award-winning comic strip collectors.
Yes.
What award I don't know. Don't ask me. Don't call me on it. Just accept it.
Uh, I'll send you I'll get a plaque made and I'll send it to you. That way you can sit there and
Yeah.
hold it up.
Yeah.
But okay, so you're doing everything through. I was going to ask, are you doing it through Big Bad or Entertainment Earth? It's just easier to go through that for like the Marvel Legends stuff and like that type of thing.
For the most part, yeah. We at our shop in Santa Monica, we don't stock a huge amount of toys because, believe it or not, it's not the biggest seller for us. We get the occasional parent with their kids who comes in and buys it, but our regulars, they don't respond to that as much. So we're kind of just a weird oddity, I guess. I don't know. We have our regulars that come in to buy their weekly pull or come in to buy like a pricey back issue or, Silver Age book, but don't really respond to the toys. And same thing with the gaming community that buy the Magic or Pokemon. They're coming in for that and not necessarily responding to the comics. So there's not a lot of crossover. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've talked to other retailers that say, oh yeah, my comic book guys, man, they buy the heck out of all the Funko Pops or the action figures or anything. And we don't necessarily have that experience. So I can only speak for my shop, what we deal with.
So, okay. There was so much about the pandemic. How hard was it to shift from a brick and mortar to having to be online, at least temporarily, while the whole world shut down?
It was a bit of a change. Thankfully, our employees were taken care of because here in California, they were all able to go on unemployment and get the whatever amount it was over and above that for live off of. So they were taken care of. We didn't necessarily have that luxury. Kristen at one point did do it because she is technically on payroll, so she could get something for it. But for the most part, we had to shut down for, I believe it was 2 months. And during that time, Kristen and I were still going in. And because at that point, the weekly books were still coming in. So something had to be done with them. We had to work on them. So we would do all the pulling for the pull customers. And we were calling them. We were calling them and saying, the books are still here. The books are still coming. We can email you an invoice for you to pay and we can ship them out to you. So we were doing that. We were thankful enough that during the time we were locked down, our landlord said, you don't have to pay any rent. While their lockdown is in place, you don't have to pay anything. So whatever money we were making on our pull customers, which was the only thing that was coming in really besides eBay store sales, that was pretty much all going to the shop, without having to go out to pay rent, which was nice. So we dealt with that. And it was actually kind of a nice change of pace for her and I, because we were getting to the point where we were just getting so frazzled and burnt out with dealing with customers day in and day out that suddenly now we were able to make it to work from Torrance to Santa Monica on the 405 freeway in 15 minutes and no more. And because literally it was empty.
Yeah.
And we would go into work, come in, lock the door, and we would just, turn on, blast the music. We would order pizza, have some beer in the fridge, the shop fridge for us, and we would work and completely uninterrupted. We didn't even have to talk to each other if we didn't want to. So it was kind of a nice change of pace. And after anyone who works retail could agree that after working retail for so long, especially managing, to have a couple of months where it was just nice and quiet and there was nobody distracting you every 5 minutes, I think that anyone who works retail could appreciate that. So that's what we did for a couple of months while we were locked down. And it honestly, it wasn't so bad. And I didn't worry about it so much because, like I said, I knew my employees were taken care of. They weren't going hungry. They weren't penniless. So it was okay. It was all right. And then we got the go ahead to open up. And sadly, our landlord said, okay, lockdown's over. You can start paying rent again, which what we were kind of like, what? Huh? No, because Santa Monica was still a ghost town. There was no tourist season happening, and tourist season for 5-6 months out of the year is it's a big moneymaker for us because we have a lot of people from other countries that are coming in and dropping a lot of money in that area. So there were no tourists. There just regular people weren't even coming into the area to shop because it was,
so much fear.
Pandemic, and it was a ghost town. So there was no way that was going to happen. So that forced us to seriously look as to whether or not we want to stay in that location. Oh, and to top it all off, a week after we were allowed to open back up, which we did, anyone who watched the news, we were looted.
That's great. I almost forgot about that. You guys were looted. And
yeah. So
man,
for anyone who watched the news and watched the rioting and looting that was going on in Santa Monica, the helicopter camera was focusing in on the Vans shoe store that was being just completely decimated and cleared out by looters. And for anyone who remembers seeing that on the news, our shop is just a couple stores down from that Vans store. So that whole block was pretty much just getting hit. So yeah,
wow.
that's fun.
I remember you guys had a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And everything, obviously it funded and all that, and you guys got everything back to normal. But so is it back to, it's back to normal now?
Oh, it's back to normal. What I was going to continue to say was because the pandemic was still happening over here in Southern California, and the work culture here changed so drastically where people were working, so many more people were working from home because a lot of the area we're at are more young professional types to where they could work from home. That really changed everything for us down there. And because a lot of our customers were people that were working in the area and would come, at some point, like on their break or their lunch break, whatever, and come and shop. So a lot of that changed, business dropped. We decided we are at a point now where we're at in like the heart of Santa Monica near the 3rd Street Promenade, which is the big shopping area, was just not sustainable. So we decided that we're going to do what we can to get out of the lease we were in and move just a few blocks east where the rent was much cheaper. So that's what we did. It's about a little over a year ago. We managed to do that and move location. And I thought it would be to our detriment because it is a little bit smaller. And hasn't really been the case. A lot of our regulars say, oh my God, I love this place so much better because there's a parking lot in front, which we didn't have at the other location.
Yeah.
So they all love that.
So you got a place to park. They stay longer, I would think.
Yeah, because they're not paying for parking like they were before. They're thinking, no, I've only got so much time on the meter. I better just buy this and go. Yeah,
exactly. So now they sit there and they talk, and it becomes more of a community type spot as opposed to get in, get out.
Yeah, especially with the gaming for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you guys make this move. So you kind of started over again, really. It sounds like.
Yeah, well, we've actually moved twice since we had the shop. When we bought it, it was at the first location that was it was almost like a giant warehouse, like a bunker almost. It used to be an Army Navy surplus store at one point.
Oh, okay.
And so it looked like a giant bunker, and it was way bigger than what we needed. What was kind of nice was that there was an actual stage in the back of the shop, and we would have things going on in the evening sometime every, once a month. Like we had a stand-up comedy show in the shop.
Nice.
On the stage, which was kind of nice. We managed to do it when we moved to the location on Broadway, close to the 3rd Street Promenade, but it was a smaller location. And then from there, a little over a year, we moved a little east to a more affordable location, which is a little smaller still. So, but so far, every move has managed to work out. So I can't complain.
Well, and then, so you guys you have an online store, right?
Yeah, like pretty much any other comic shop, we have an eBay store, in store, not just an account, but an actual store account. So it's our actual business online. So that's where you will find a lot of our more higher end comics that we get in collections. Those books are still available to buy in the shop, but obviously they sell quicker and better online than they do in the shop. So we have that.
So when you,
and same thing with our cards, we have what's called TCG Player, which is a website similar to eBay, but for Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards. So this day and age, like I said, you can't afford to just be a physical location that just sells comics. You have to expand. You have to have gaming. You have to have other areas of revenue, and that also includes online. That's how shops survive.
Yeah, no, to me, it always made sense. And I guess, you know, my background being in retail and working at Sam's and dealing with, you know, those businesses, all the ma and pa shops that would come in and get all their stuff, you know, it makes sense that you would diversify and not just be the comic shop.
Yeah.
So what are you reading now? Tell people, because we're a little over an hour, and I was kind of expecting about an hour long episode.
Right.
So tell people about where they can find you, what you got going on, what's coming up, and
what I'm reading.
Yeah, what you're reading.
Okay. Well, you can find the comic strip collectors at collectorscomic.com. And I like that the URL has been there on the screen the whole time. And
you're welcome.
There is a link there on the website. You can find like the latest comic strips, and then you can also find links to the socials to follow there as well. Then you can also find us at HidioHocomics.com, which is the website for the shop. And if you're in Southern California, you can find us in Santa Monica on Lincoln Boulevard, 1803, if I'm remembering the address correctly. It's getting used to the new address. And so, yeah, come on in and visit the shop. And what am I reading? Well, part of what Kristen and I do running the shop is every Tuesday evening, we do a Facebook Live show from the shop where we talk about what books are coming out that week. And we talk about at least 3 books that we read that day that we highly recommend. And I will say the one book, actually there's 2 that I really, really love right now that's coming out. In fact, the one series, just the final issue came out this week. Rogues, which is a DC Black Label series, is absolutely fantastic. If you're not reading it, shame on you. It is fantastic. It is about D-list DC villains who are, for the most part, mostly like Flash's rogue gallery that are trying to pull off one big last job to kind of, for the fame and the glory, and to retire. So it is like Ocean's 11, but with DC supervillains. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so beautifully, wonderfully written. And it's a 4-issue Black Label series. And the 4th issue came out this week, the 4th and final issue. So it's the ending. And I read the ending and went, oh my God, it's so good. The other series that I love a lot is one called Public Domain by Image, put out by Image. And it's being written by Chip Zdarsky.
Dude, he's
fantastic.
He's killing it.
Yes. And for those of you not familiar with what this series is, it is about an older retired comic book artist and his 2 grown adult sons. And he finds out, basically this adult artist is kind of like almost like a Jack Kirby-ish type character, where all these characters that he created in his younger days are now on the screen, TV and film, making billions and billions of dollars while he's basically getting nothing. He basically gets a ticket to the premiere in Hollywood to see the movie, and that's really it. So he's kind of forgotten and made nothing from this billion-dollar industry that he helped basically to create. And his 2 adult sons it causes friction between him and his 2 adult sons because of the fact that he's okay with it. You know, it's like he's just kind of a simple person. Well, in the turn of events, he assistant to the big head honcho of the film studios is almost kind of like a Stan Lee-ish type character. Mm-hmm. From an old contract between the artist and the publishing companies, he comes to find out that all those characters he created back then are actually owned by him, that he owns all of them. So that starts off a legal battle between the family, the artist and his adult sons, and the big big studio execs and conglomeration to try to get something out of it, to get those characters or to get some money out of it. And his dad is like kind of simple. He's already kind of beaten and thinking, well, I don't want to put our family through this battle. And his sons are telling him, no, this is your legacy. You need to go fight for it. You need to get it. Don't do it for us. Do it for you. Do it for you and mom, so you guys can have a good retirement and enjoy life. So it ends up being this story of like a Stan Lee, Jack Kirby type situation, but it really turns out to be this really heartfelt story about this dad and his two adult sons and their relationship. So it's a fantastic, fantastic book. So that's what I'm reading.
Okay, I'm gonna have to definitely check that out, because like Zdarsky's spec was hit and miss for me, but like his Daredevil's been really good. Others like that, and that last issue of spec was phenomenal, one of the best issues that I've read in years. But I just I'll have to definitely check that out. So okay, so
as much as I am a Marvel guy, I've been finding like a lot of the most really well done, compelling stories have been the indies, and it's usually been by somewhat known creators that I think that they enjoy and do good work for the big two, for like the good characters like Spider-Man and Batman and so, but I think they're really saving their heart and soul for their own creator-owned projects in the indies. And that's where I think a lot of the most compelling stories have been.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that tectonic shift over the last, 15 years or so, where, they're doing good. Like you were just saying, they're doing really good over at the big two, but then like you can tell the passion that they have for these creator-owned books.
And I hear Joe says, "Oh my God, that sounds amazing. What book is this?" If you didn't hear, the title is Public Domain. It's published by Image and written by Chip Zdarsky. Check it out.
So I will also include that in the show notes. Any recommendations that you're making, I will hunt down and put in the show notes for the audio and later on for the video once we finish the broadcast. Okay, so let's start wrapping things up. We'll take a few questions from the chat. If you got a question for Eddie, feel free to ask. While he's asking that question, I gotta have you. How did you get to know Stan the Man Lee?
Well, okay, it started I think back in 2010-ish, somewhere around there. I had him sign my copy of Avengers #4 in San Diego Comic-Con. And this was back when you didn't have to pay hundreds of dollars to get Stan's signature. It was just a lottery thing where you got a raffle ticket, and if your number was pulled, you got to come back and get in line. And there was no charge. How nice. I mean, can you imagine? Anyway,
right.
So I got pictures of him signing my Avengers #4, and I said, I grew up reading your stuff. I feel like you're my second dad. And he said, well, thank you, second son. And that was it. I thought, okay, I met Stan Lee. I can die happy. That's probably never going to happen again. Well, years later, I got a job working on an independent documentary film, which was basically a documentary about Stan Lee. And the reason why they hired me was because I had graphic design experience. I knew Photoshop, and I had a pretty big Marvel, Silver Age Marvel comic book collection, and they needed scans of pages and characters from these old comics. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, you're when can you start? And so during the course of working on that film, which was about a good, God, how long was it? A year and a half? I forget. I don't remember. I got to meet Stan again a couple of times, and the kicker to that was towards the end. With two of the film's producers, I went up to Stan's office at POW Entertainment, his company, and basically hung out in his office with him for a couple of hours with the producers, which was kind of nice. And couple things. This was before the Christmas/holiday break, so everyone, the office was kind of empty. It was very relaxed, so it was just kind of just people just hanging out and just being real. And Stan is mostly like how he is when he's around the public, that kind of persona, but it's not as verbose and what's the word I'm looking for, as rambunctious or whatever. He's still the same, but just more subdued. And also what you don't get with the public persona that you see when you go to a convention is the man's got a bit of a dirty mouth. I heard him say the F word the first time in his office. I was like, oh my God, Stan just said the F word. It was like if you would hear Jesus Christ cuss, I guess, is what I reckon it, liken it to.
Oh, I remember when Brad did the Salvi Sima podcast tribute, and it's got Stan on there, and Stan's just riffing, and he's saying hell and shit, and I was like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like his normal thing. I got to imagine it must have been like very tough for him to not slip into that when he was at conventions and around the public, because some people just, when they talk like that, it just kind of slips out sometimes. So kudos to him for being able to control that, because I know I don't a lot of the times. And so I was afraid to talk to the guy when I was like literally sitting on the other side of his desk in the chair, just staring at him while everyone else was talking. And he would turn, he would be at his desk chair, and every so often he would just kind of turn and check his email and then come back. And he checked his email one time, and he turns back and goes, I just got an email from the producers of this show, Big Bang Theory. You ever hear of it? And I go, yeah. And he goes, is it funny? And I said, yeah, but I got it. But a lot of the jokes and the humor is all DC characters. And he says, well, they asked me to be on the show, so I guess I'll fix that.
Yeah. And he had a pretty memorable cameo in his Fantastic Four robe.
Yeah. So when eventually, and I forgot all about that, but then when the show came on, and I think I was flipping through the channels, me and my wife were flipping the channel and saw it. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. He was telling me that in his office. Okay. Another thing that I really, and I feel bad for the guy, because even it's really great that you have a career that has such longevity, and the characters that you co-created and were a part of were so loved that you are in such demand even well into your old age, which towards the end, I kind of feel bad for the guy, because I feel like at some point, he was just showing up conventions with other people moving his hand practically. But for the most part, like during the time I was working on that, the documentary, even though he was, older, he was very spry.
Yeah.
Very with it.
Yeah. The
I
last
remember watching him just in the office, like bounding up the staircase, at one point, thinking, how old is he? That guy's like, like he's still in his 20s. And what I felt bad when I finished my thought was he had a room in his office that was the signing room. Basically all the stuff that gets sent to him by, like, say, I don't know, CGC or all the other publishers or this, that, whatever, that, where you buy memorabilia that's signed by him. That's what this room was for. And there was one day a week where he would just sit in that room for a literal 8 to 10 hours doing nothing but signing stuff over and over and over and over. And I kind of felt bad for him thinking that. I mean, it's great that you are so still revered and wanted by the public in your older years like that. But man, that's got to be tough.
I remember we were talking about, and when Joan passed away, I had said, I was like, I don't know how long Stan will, because you just see that on somebody that's been, when those couples have been together that long, just the decline. And it's just kind of the natural, it feels like a natural order of things type thing. But you definitely saw, like you were saying, that last year and a half, 2 years, he very much declined very quickly. But I mean, the guy was when he was like 95. I mean, he was jumping around and jovial, smiling Stan. And, you talk about a life well lived.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of life that you want to have, where you're sitting there and you're spry and people love you. Yes, that downside, like you were just saying about having to go into that room and sign your name 1,500 times, 15,000 times, however many times he did that at that point.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that seems like it'd be miserable, but,
Yeah.
I
saw him. Sorry to interrupt. I saw him at an event. My wife and I went, and this was a few months after Joan had passed, and he was still kind of like very, to the public, very jovial and like the Stanley that but you can tell that the spark was gone. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I could even just see it just in the few public appearances he did make. I was like, oh. Obviously the movies, that's a whole different thing, but yeah, man. So have you caught up on all the MCU stuff, or is it just so much now that it's so hard to keep up with?
Mostly, there were some things that I never did get around to seeing, like, I don't know, like the second season of Jessica Jones. Never managed to see that. I never did see Iron Fist, but according to a lot of people, I didn't miss much.
Yeah.
We finished She-Hulk, which I much to the dismay of a lot of people online who want to, poop on it. I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it from beginning to end. And then there's Werewolf by Night, which we have not yet watched, but I'm sure we will very soon because it looks pretty fantastic.
I haven't seen Werewolf by Night yet, but no, I watched She-Hulk. Look, there was parts that I really loved. There was parts I didn't love, but overall, I thought it was one of the stronger MCU shows. Like it's been very up and down for me on the MCU shows, but like that one was. I love the last episode. It was so irreverent and just. I'm so looking forward to seeing what they do with Deadpool after what they did with She-Hulk. Like the I mean, how it's going to be taken up to an 11. Like, I'm looking forward to it. But
what I want to know is too regarding that is how big was the Brinks truck that they had to back up to Hugh Jackman's house to play Wolverine again?
Well, I mean, if anybody has the amount of money it would take to lure Hugh Jackman out of retirement to play, it would be Disney Marvel. I mean,
I suspect though it probably wasn't the money; it was Ryan Reynolds that convinced him to come back.
I truth be told, yes, I 100% agree with you. I think, there was very few things that would have pulled him back, and I think that, and I also think I think between that and getting to work with Marvel directly now and not have to deal with Fox, I think is something that I think is would be. He always expressed that in the past that if he could be in
I'm sure if someone else comes in the near future and takes over as Wolverine, I think that he could still take pride in the fact that he was the one that brought it to Marvel. So that's probably another factor.
And he said his dream was always to be one of those Avengers movies, and I just got a feeling he's gonna at least be in a couple of scenes of Secret Wars or Kang Dynasty before it's all said and done. I mean, at this point now. So, like I say, you got a small convention you're going to be doing. You're going to be appearing at down in California. Kind of plug that, let people know where that's going to be at, and then we'll start wrapping the show up.
Yeah, that's going to be. It's called East End Art and Comic Takeover, and it's in Pomona. Gosh, I don't have the address because I wasn't prepared to plug it, so I apologize.
No, that's fine.
But anybody can go onto my social media and see my promotion of it and see exactly where it's at. Beyond that, my next appearance is going to be my my return to LA Comic Con here in LA. I'm always a guest every year, and I'm going to be there in December.
And you're going to be in Baltimore for those that are in Baltimore.
Well, I'm not going to be there with my comic. I'm not going to have a table or a booth or anything. I'm not going to be there promoting anything. I'm just going there for fun.
Oh yeah.
My wife, Kristen, was fortunate enough to win a scholarship from Bink to go to the Diamond Summit at Baltimore Comic Con. So we're going for that, and then we're going to stay through Sunday for Baltimore Comic Con. Check it out. I've never been to Baltimore. I've never been to that convention. So it's basically going to be going for fun. And it's also the weekend of our anniversary. So we're going to just go and try to have a little fun and have a little getaway.
Sweet. Well, thanks again for being a part of the episode, man. This was a lot of fun. What's the podcast, or plug that podcast again that you're talking shop type show?
It's called Tales from the Comic Shop, and you can find it on most platforms, Spotify, so-and-so, such and such. I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's been a while since we've been recorded because, like I said, life happens. Roger, our co-host, bought a second location, expanded his first, and Joe in the comments reminded me that he even bought a third location. So the man is a busy guy. So
yes.
But we got to wrangle him in to do another one real soon, just to catch up on everything that's happened since the last time we recorded.
Well, you're welcome back here on the Spidey Dude Radio Network anytime.
Someone's here. The other half of Hideo Comics and the other half of Collectors can pop in and say a quick hello.
Well, hello. Long time no see, Kristen. It's good to see you.
I hope you remember, Zach, when you're at Comic-Con with Don, Josh, John, Stella.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Yes.
It's been a decade, so and I had a lot more hair on the top of my head.
Yeah. He looked like a long-haired surfer dude.
I did look like I fit in California at that point. So
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you got people in the comments saying hi to you as well. So Vinkman says
hello.
So side note, the last couple of years, I actually, while I'm still involved in Hideo and still a co-owner, I actually stepped away from managing it because I wanted to spend time doing other stuff, basically, working more on my comic strip and other pursuits, but still doing owner stuff in the background. And we were going to hire on a new manager, but the person who ended up taking it over.
Yes.
Oh.
So Kristen is now the active manager of the shop.
So when some Karen wants to speak with the manager, they have to speak with Kristen.
Oh, and yes. And trust me.
Yes, that's right.
Trust me, Kristen does not take any guff.
Well,
she does not take any, you know what.
Yeah.
She shut down many a complainer or problem person in the shop.
That's good. So be sure to go to all those particular places: Hideo Comics, collectorscomic.com, hideocomics.com. All that the stuff will be in the description down below. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Spidey Dude Experience. Thanks again to Eddie and Kristen for coming on and being a part of the episode. I had a blast. And like I said, you're welcome anytime, Eddie, that you want to jump on. And this was a lot of fun. So with that, I'm going to click this little button here and hit the music. So once again, got to thank our wrong music. There we go. Before we get out of here, at Spidey Dude Radio on Twitter, at Spidey Dude Network on Facebook, at Spidey Dude Radio Network on YouTube as well. Our voicemail line, if you want to leave a voicemail for the show, is 818-925-6631. And be sure to check out collectorscomic.com. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for listening. If you're listening to us on the audio editions, before I get out of here, though, I got to thank our patrons at patreon.com/Spidey Network. Vinkman, Scott, Greg, Phoenician, Kale, Georgia, Jessica, Catherine, Cindy, and Jurgen. Thank you guys for your support
of the Spidey Dude Radio Network and all the great shows, such as Amazing Spider-Man Classics, Make Mine Mayday, this show, The Spidey Dude Experience, Clone Saga Chronicles, Spectacular Radio, Salvi Sim Era Podcasting. Coming soon, it'll be a Patreon first show, Books of X. Will be the show all about the Krakoa X-Men, talking about that era of the X-Men. So if you like this show, be sure to give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting catcher. And without further ado, we'll begin to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching. Thanks again for listening. And we'll see you guys next time here on the Spidey Dude Radio Network.